What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over several tips to hopefully help you stop losing to the Avatar Mythics in Season 2. As always, if you guys enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more, and comment down below which Avatar Mythic you have the hardest time playing against, or that you find like the most tilting to play against down in the comments below. So we're going to start off with the Firebending Mythic, because I know the Hades chains were also previously in this season, and it was a melee weapon. And a lot of people had difficulty dealing with the Hades chain, and the Fire Mythic functions very similar. There's obviously differences between the weapons, but they're both melee style weapons. Someone get close to you, and then they just kind of spam their attack, and you take a lot of damage pretty quickly. And one of the biggest problems or biggest frustrations that comes up when dealing with these melee weapons is going to be that your character can get like flung around at times, and it can be difficult to track the enemy player that's attacking you, as their character model is basically like teleporting around when they're doing the attack, and while your character model is getting like flung around. That is like the biggest difficulty, I think, when it comes to dealing with the melee weapons in Fortnite. And so the biggest thing you want to avoid is having a long drawn out fight versus these melee weapons. You want to either kill them at range, not fight them up close, but if you are going to fight them up close, you want to be able to end that fight quick. And so I think the biggest piece of advice I would have for the melee weapons is just don't force fights on people without getting early damage first, whether it's with AR tags or with like a sniper shot or a DMR shot, something that allows you to weaken up the opponent. That way you don't have to 250 to 0 them while they're attacking you with the melee weapon. And obviously you're not going to know all the time that someone is trying to use that for sure. This is just like a decent rule to have, I think, in general, is to just not 50-50 people with shotguns. There will be times where you have to, though. Like, there's going to be times where you're going to have to jump on somebody without early tags because, like, the situation just isn't good. But you just don't want to be forcing these fights often. So, like, that would be my biggest piece of advice for dealing with the melee weapons, is just to not 50-50 people without early tags with shotguns. That's true all the time, but it's even more so true when melee weapons are in the game. Another thing you can do to make it a bit easier to deal with the firebenders is to car fight them. And what I mean by this is when you have your car, you kind of get out of the car and shoot them, and then get back in the car, maybe reposition the car a little bit, get out, shoot them, and you just kind of rinse and repeat this over and over again. This has been, again, something that's a relevant tactic or relevant strategy to have for a bit now, especially last season with the prevalence of the auto shotgun and players just taking those 50-50s. But now with the melee weapons as well, if you're able to kind of jump out of the car and shoot them and then get back in, you're exposed for a very limited amount of time, and it makes it harder for them to hit you or do anything to you. So you're going to take less damage. They might also end up getting in the car with you, at which point that you could just get out and shoot them with like an AR or something and get a lot of damage quickly. So I feel like being able to car fight constantly like resets the fight, and you never really end up in that situation where you're just getting flung around and you don't really have control over your character. Another huge benefit this season is going to be the Cerberus dashes. So if you get the Cerberus medallion at Grim Gate, or if you touch the green water, then you're going to be able to get those dashes, and those dashes will also make it much easier to play against somebody using these melee weapons, because maybe you go to fight them, you don't know they have it, and then they start using it, you're getting flung around like I've talked about. Then you can just dash away and then maybe like start shooting them with an AR while they're stuck in the animation, or just dash away a little bit and reset the fight. You don't have to completely run away, but just having a dash can get you out of range of their attack. And if you guys have ever used any of these melee weapons, if you're spamming the attack button and then the person gets away, then sometimes like the person using the melee weapon might not realize that fast enough, and then they kind of get stuck in that animation, and make it easier for you to eliminate them while they're just kind of hitting nothing, you know? So the gatekeeper dashes can be good with this. The flowberry effect can be good with this. And then also the Zeus medallion, or the banana of the gods effect, allows you to sprint jump higher, and then you can maybe jump out of above them and away from them. And then the flowberries, you can kind of do the same thing where you jump up and out of their kind of ability to attack you. The thing is with the flowberries though, you would kind of need to have it activated already, but if you are going to like flowberry and then shockwave on somebody, you might still have your flow effect left when they start attacking you with the firebender mythic, if that turns out to be what they do. So I think that is the easiest way to deal with the firebender mythic. Dashes, car fighting, and just not to 50-50 people when you don't need to, or when you don't have early tags. That way you don't get into those long drawn out close range fights where you need to 250 to 0 somebody. The Airbender mythic is also a very frustrating mythic for a lot of players. And I feel like this one isn't one that you lose to that much. It just allows people to run away. One of the first things I want to talk about is going to be the visual audio setting. In the audio settings, there's a visualize sound effect option. And this will put indicators on your screen when various things are happening in game. And you will get a visual on screen for somebody using the Airbender mythic to travel. And this makes it a lot easier to find them than relying on sound alone. So I would highly recommend using visual audio. Pretty much all the time it's kind of OP, but especially right now because this is in the game and it's kind of quiet, you won't be getting snuck up on by them as much if you're using visual audio. The biggest problem I think a lot of people have with this though is that they get someone weak and then that person runs away and then they really want to get that kill. I'm very guilty of this as well, where I'll chase people, but you end up investing too much into that one kill, whether it's like shockwaves and dashes and you use all your shocks chasing one person that you have weak, or you end up getting third partied by somebody else because you're too tunnel visioned on that one kill. So that's would be my biggest thing. Don't tunnel vision too much on people using the airbenders. If someone's using the airbender just to completely run away from you, they're not the most imminent threat. And you'll have a lot of people, especially in ranked in game, just using it and running around constantly. But like the people who are just doing this aren't the most imminent threat at the time. They might become the threat later on. They might run away and then stop using it and then start shooting you. But if they're just full sprinting away from you, I know you really want to get that kill. I'm there. But oftentimes, tunnel visioning in on that player is more detrimental than just letting them go and focus on potential threats in the area, especially with snipers still in the game this season. Like, you can get eliminated at any moment. So try not to tunnel vision on them too much. Just really know when to chase and when not to chase. If I think the person using the Airbender mythic was a good player, like, let's say we had our initial fight, they seem decent, I get them like less than 50 health, I'm probably going to be very intent on chasing them. If I hit someone like 80 shield and they start running from it, I'm probably not going to be that motivated to chase them. I might still really want to get that kill, but if I don't have them incredibly weak, I'm going to be less motivated to chase them because you're going to probably have to chase them for longer, hit more shots. It's less likely that you actually eliminate them. And then also, like I already said, if they're a good player, I'm more motivated to eliminate them than if I think they're like an average player, just like an okay player. I want to get those good players out of the lobby when I can. But if they're just okay, I might be more inclined to let them go. So how weak you have them will affect how much you want to chase and how good they are, I think, or how good you think they are, how much of a threat you think they are. I think will also kind of weigh into whether or not you should chase them. You probably shouldn't ever chase them, but you know, we're Fortnite players. We're probably going to chase people when they're running from us. And also one thing I wanted to touch on, there is not really an exploit, but a trick people do with like flowberries, shockwaves, and the air mythic. You can get very high and sometimes out of like audio range and visual audio range, being super high in the sky, just like kind of soaring. They're not doing the movement, they're just flying really high. So just kind of keep that in mind. You might get landed on by people who aren't making any audio because of the combination of flowberry fizz, shockwaves, and then like the airbender mythic as well. The waterbender mythic is very effective, and I think it's also the hardest one to give advice on how to play against it because it plays very similar to a regular weapon. It's a very good regular weapon, but it plays very similar to a regular weapon. Like, I look at this as just like a burst AR. I would play versus the waterbender mythic the same way I would play versus a really good burst AR. I think the problem a lot of people have with this is they try to fight it like medium to range with their AR. They're like, okay, I got my Nemesis or I got my Warforged. There's a guy 50 meters away. I'm just going to sit here and try to spray them. And then the waterbender mythic ends up winning that kind of damage exchange because it is very good. And it's a very kind of like, well, it's a burst, but like it could do so much damage in a single burst. If you hit like 3 headshots, you know, it can kill very, very quick. So I think the biggest thing is just to avoid medium range damage trade situations with it. If I'm playing against somebody using this, I'm probably going to try to play from behind cover. Yes, they melt cover very quickly with this, but I'm going to try to play from behind cover, look to hit a snipe, and then shockwave on the person afterwards. And that's kind of how I play a lot of fights anyways. I feel like those situations where you just get AR on AR gunfight in Fortnite is not very common, especially in Chapter 5. The sniper or the DMR is going to be like really good for those situations because you can play from behind cover, peek for a fraction of a second, do a lot of damage, and then get in there with shockwaves and get the kill once you kind of already have the damage in your favor. You kind of start that fight with already like 100 or, you know, more damage. It's very easy to clean it up with a shotgun. And so you're not going to be in the like ideal situation for the waterbender. I think ideal situation for the waterbender is you just kind of sit there and shoot them with their AR, and then they just kind of melt you down with it very quickly. So try to avoid those situations and play off the DMR or the sniper. Peek for very limited amounts of time, throw out your damage, and then make it a close range fight if you really don't like playing against the waterbender mythic. Also, just try not to be in areas where you're exposed from like lots of angles and you don't have cover near you. That's kind of just a general piece of advice all the time. But when you have something like this in the game that can kill very quickly, if you're exposed to less angles or you always have cover near you, it's one of the reasons why I use cars so much. Like, yes, the waterbender can fry cars, but if you have your car, you do have some piece of cover to potentially, you know, protect yourself from it at any time. Just limiting how often you're in a wide open area can be huge. Mobility also will allow you to get out of those situations. But I feel like the less you're in very exposed areas and the less you're just kind of taking damage trades versus this weapon, the better off you're probably going to be. But like I said, it is a very good weapon, and it's just, I look at it as like a very good AR. It's kind of hard to give advice for like, how do you play against this thing that's just basically a gun? Because the other mythics I feel like are more unique. And then the final thing is going to be the earthbending, and playing against people using the earthbending is definitely different because it creates such an imbalance in their favor. Not only do they have infinite cover, but with the attack of this item, they can just completely remove your cover very quickly. And so what I typically try to do is going to be very similar to the waterbender mythic, is I try to just hit a snipe on them and then push them and then get the kill that way. I feel like I don't want to have a drawn out like medium range fight versus the earthbender mythic, because the longer it goes on, I feel like the cover advantage is going to be more and more in their favor because they have the ability to remove my cover. But I feel the same way about porta bunkers. If I'm playing against somebody in pubs who's using porta bunkers, I often am just going to like try to push them, whether that's shockwaving myself up and shockwaving them out of the bunker, looking for a snipe and then pushing, or maybe just pushing them straight up. Because a lot of times when you play against people using bunkers or the earthbender mythic in pubs, you might start a fight with damage and then they use that item because they're behind, and then you could just immediately shockwave on that, or airbender mythic, whatever you're using, and then try to get the kill that way. I look at it very similar to how I look at bunkers, where like just any moment you get an advantage in the fight, you want to really press that advantage using your mobility. And if you don't have any ability to like get damage on them, then maybe trying to shockwave them out of it, if you have shockwaves, can be a really good play. It's very similar to playing against bunkers. Just know that you don't want to have just a very neutral situation where you're sitting behind cover, not doing anything, and they're just behind their thing, because they can remove your cover very quickly. Cars can also work somewhat good for trying to push people using the earthbender mythic, because you can drive, maybe get out and snipe them when they spray you, and kind of just rinse and repeat that until you get a tag on them. And then once you get that tag, you go. But that is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys found this helpful, informative, interesting. As always, if you did, remember to give it a like, subscribe, comment down below which mythic you think is best or which one you have the hardest time playing against. Hopefully these tips help you. Obviously, there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to make it like perfect, that you never lose to it again, because a lot of these items are very good, but some of this advice hopefully can help you lose to it less often. And I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.